All right. What is going on, STAX users? Good to see you guys. I know there's quite a few things to discuss today. We had FOMC. They decided to hold rates steady. We now see the dollar dropping to 8-year lows. But the S&P 500 just hit 7,000 today. Peaked up above it, came right back down. There is an interesting statistic that says once it breaks, anytime the S&P 500 breaks a threshold of around 1,000, it generally goes up. I think it's like 100% of the time it goes up by the next day. So I think we see a peak up above 7,000 just tomorrow. The expectations for rates being held steady, it was like a 98% chance that was going to happen. So that's nothing new. We do have some geopolitical tensions still on the table. A lot of, turmoil within the U.S. as well when it comes down to ICE and these different things happening. But our focus here for today is going to be on the upcoming earnings and also take a peek at some of the things that have happened in terms of earlier this week with some of the bigger names that have just reported. The first thing I want to bring up to you guys actually today is this on our flow scanner. We see 381 million in calls for GLD, for gold. And you guys might know gold peaked up above 5,000 just earlier this week. I believe we're at like 5,300 today. This gold position that we see here, I just want to show it to you guys. It's obviously a big money print. $365 million, $500 strike. They got in at 485. 3% move up to the upside. I believe somebody just said this one's already up about 10 to 15% from just earlier today. All right. What's interesting about this, I will point out, this was not a STAX AI call out, but it is one of the bigger prints we've ever seen when it comes down to positioning on the big money side of things. All right. So definitely, right. 282,000 contracts at $12.95. I believe it is up at this point. And you can see the flow for gold has been extremely strong. But keep in mind, what is one of the factors that is pushing gold up? Not only is the fact that there's a lot of demand just globally, but also the fact that the dollar is continuing to weaken, which is causing asset prices to go up higher. Well, actually, while we do that, let's peek over at WaveX for GLD for today. That's interesting to see. Yeah, we saw a rise. GLD went from 484 up to 492. So GLD, the ETF for gold, isn't quite at 500 yet, but this is expecting it to move up there by February 20th is what this one says. So they've got a little bit of time, a couple more weeks, 3 more weeks or so for this to move up. I think there's a solid chance we see that happen. This over for us. So in other news, we are seeing the S&P 500 right at about 7,000 right now. Let's go ahead and draw that for us here. Put it right at 7,000. So we just tapped on that today. High probability we're going to test above it and then see if it comes right back down or not. All right. I think it's headed higher. I mean, the dollar continues to weaken. A weaker dollar does a couple things for this administration, where it starts to increase the possibility that we will start to see lower interest rates, which would be beneficial for the national debt. I think that's one of the biggest concerns, especially heading into midterms. Dealing with that and making sure that it's serviceable to an extent. At these current rates, it's, like $1 trillion per year at this point, which is, ridiculous to think about. But with that also being said, I think you guys mostly are here because we've got some earnings to talk about. We have not only what happened earlier this week, we had United Healthcare with the news of the administration implementing flat reimbursements for Medicare, and at the end of the day, that caused UNH to drop about 10% overnight, and then lower than expectations for their earnings continued and ended up dropping UNH down about 20%. It has recovered just a tiny little bit since then. But still kind of an ugly little gap down to this lower end. We will see what ends up happening. There is still a possibility that it can come down to revisit. My support level here is at about 250, where we could still see this drop about 50 more points before we start to see another rally back up to the upside. Boeing also reported on Tuesday. Sorry, it always does that. Boeing is now up at the upper bound of this accumulation range that we've seen. This accumulation range has been going on since 2020, as you guys all know what's happened since then. Have quite a bit of volume on that sell-off, but we are now back at the upper bound of this range. We continue to see this sign of strength and continue to see volume come in. I believe we chop around up in this upper bound just a little bit before we start to move up higher above this 267 and eventually above 280, and then we should start to see it move higher. It's a defense contractor to understand as well. So we could, if we do see geopolitical tensions continue, any announcements of war type of thing would, very possibly push this up higher. UPS had a bit of a pop during their earnings, but has come right back down afterwards. I think the biggest announcement with it has to do with the fact that they are planning to cut about 30,000 jobs at this point. But they do have a projection of higher revenue for the upcoming year. Hard to say about this. I mean, UPS, still a strong company. Delete those real quick. But the earnings was just not as well received as it should have been. Ultimately they did beat numbers. Cutting costs in terms of cutting their workforce. It's bad in terms of it for the people that are losing their jobs, but in terms of a company, it does increase their bottom line. That's what happens a lot of times with these, publicly traded companies. We currently are just still stuck in this bit of a channel. So until additional moves are made, we are now back at the lower end of that. Texas Instruments reported they actually missed their earnings just slightly, but positive guidance led them into moving up higher. They're up about 10% just for today. One sec. The other big one is STX. Seagate, I already told you guys yesterday in our Discord live streams for our STAX members, it very likely was going to be a beat, which we did see. Beat the earnings by about 10%, revenue up about 3%, but they basically said they have a supply constraint. There's so much demand for their product. It's up 20% as of today. The initial move after hours with the report actually went to the downside, but that was just a liquidity grab to the lower end of here, and then it just continued to pop up higher. From that drop, actually, it's up 25%, but as of today, 19, almost 20% up. Seagate's definitely one of the bigger winners when it comes down to what's been going on with this year. Seagate, SanDisk does report at the end of tomorrow. It's already getting a little bit of a pump due to this news as well. I think SanDisk continues to go up to the next fib level very possibly up to 550. We'll take a peek over at our STAX flow today as well to see what's going on with that. Today before open, we saw ASML. ASML is they are the producers of the machines that help make the chips. So Intel and TSM are some of their bigger customers. They actually had a decent earnings. They missed earnings up by just 1%, but revenue is up. And ultimately, you know, I find it a little bit surprising that it's down, but it has had quite a bit of a run up most recently. This company will be in demand for many, many years to come, especially if we are going to continue to build these data centers and we are going to, you know, the chip demand continues to rise. They will be, you know, they'll be in business for a very long time, especially right now with TSM announcing that they are expanding their factories in Arizona. They just bought a huge plot of land. You know, ASML is going to have to produce those machines for them to expand those factories. Corning did have an announcement that they are partnering with Meta to help produce their optical cables, their optical communications, their fiber optic cables for their AI data centers, which will increase their revenue and their bottom line quite a bit. It is down today. There now is a gap down below for it to fill, but I think down the line we will see Corning going up higher. It did go through a little bit of an accumulation range right here, or reaccumulation, sorry. So I do believe that we are headed higher. We could come back to retest this trend line, maybe fill that gap before we go up further. That would probably be my worst case scenario for this. So what you guys are here for today, let's take a peek over at the charts. We'll go switch over to STAX as well. We've got Microsoft, Meta, Tesla, Lam Research, ServiceNow, IBM, Waste Management, Las Vegas Sands. We're going to try to get to all of those before we close. See if there's anything interesting that shows up in the flow. Try to get you guys, if you guys are interested in playing earnings, I just want to make sure you guys understand earnings is always going to be a coin flip in most cases. Even if we understand that, you know, the company is doing well, projections are up, the earnings, bottom line, revenue, all that's doing great. Keep in mind, just because it's an earnings beat does not always mean that it's going to go up. What I've actually found kind of interesting recently is that you do actually have the ability to go on like Polymarket and Kalshi and actually make bets on whether or not they're going to beat earnings. So something like Seagate, something like SanDisk, I think there's a very high probability you could even go on there and see what the projections are that they will beat earnings. That, I think, is more direct, because if you have that expectation and, you know, bottom line, the numbers are up, you can cash out on that type of thing. But in these situations with the market, a lot of times, a lot of these things are somewhat priced in. If the expectation is that they're going to be earnings, we might have already seen the run up. We might already see price at an all-time high, which just increases the probability and the chances that we actually might see a pullback afterwards. Okay. With that being said, peek at Microsoft. Microsoft, I've had this charted for a little bit. Expecting it to kind of break down below this little flag we see. I do have my lower end of support marked at a previous gap down below, but it started to recover a little bit earlier than that. We are back in this range. Microsoft, I will point out, Microsoft should do fairly well with earnings, but the biggest concern right now has to do with this narrative of the CapEx spending. Okay, what does that mean? Every one of these AI companies right now has to deal with how much money they're spending for AI, how much money they have committed to the data centers. And at the end of the day, there sometimes is a little bit of this creative accounting practices done in order to kind of hide those expenditures and not really allow them to affect these earnings numbers and things like that. So there's already hints of that happening, which is also reminiscent of what happened during the dot-com bubble and the burst with what happened there. But on the other end of it is, if one of these companies, one of these big AI data center companies, and with this, trillions of dollars of capex for the data centers, if they start to show hesitations and slowing down of it, and aren't able to necessarily word it properly within their earnings calls, could start to see that create a sell-off. That's where I think the biggest risk happens to be with these earnings. With the dollar lower, with asset prices going higher, with continued spending on a lot of these things, there still is this possibility we will see things pop up higher. But the moment they start to hesitate and show that hesitation, or it is revealed that one of the biggest risks that we have seen is that data centers are being built, but they can't be powered right now, right? There's a report I heard of how OpenAI's data centers would require about 20% of all of the US's electricity expenditures. All of the electricity we produce, it would take about 20% of that just to power OpenAI's projected data centers. And I got to go look a little deeper in this. There's something that said about it needs 250 nuclear power plants to power just the data center itself. And it's not like those power plants are just going to pop up overnight. Okay? So down the line, yes, all this could very much be what the future of AI looks like. But the money's flown into a lot of these names, but the results will take a lot longer than what's expected. And I think that's where this question of, is this a bubble? Is this too early? Is the infrastructure not there? I think that's where the big question lies. Now, let's jump into what STAX has to say, because again, a lot of times it helps. Oh, typed that wrong. MSFT, Microsoft. So WaveX actually shows quite a bit of calls being sold off. We're actually looking at it as kind of a bearish outlook for Microsoft. Okay, so the calls are being sold off. Do we see anything significant when it comes down to it? Well, we do have some calls for Friday. 520 calls, $1 million spent, $1.50 of that. That's a, if you want a little earnings gamble, $150 on that per contract. 7,000 in volume today, with only about 400 or 4,000 OI right there. IV's at about 80, so it's fairly high. The shortest expiration put that I see here is for February, 490, and so this one's already in the money. So, a little bit of conflicting. I would definitely say WaveX showing so many calls being sold off definitely leans bearish. Big money is still willing to take these risks with it, saying we could see Microsoft head up higher. So maybe they are about to announce something in terms of their bottom line has increased, and that type of thing. So a lot of the bigger expenditures a lot of the bigger prints that we see here are from the 23rd over here. Yeah, if I just filter for big money, they're still fairly bullish on Microsoft overall. We do have the STAX AI call that came in, and that's for June of this year, 590. And they got in, they're up a little bit at this point, but they're expecting about a 26% move to the upside. So, is the AI trade dead? I don't necessarily think so. It's definitely shifted over right now, as you can see with STX and SanDisk. We've moved on into the memory part of the trade. I think energy still is a very good possibility soon. We already saw the quantum trade go up and back down. But you know, with what STAX AI has to say, at least down till June, we could very likely still see Microsoft going up higher. Next, we got Meta. I want to get to these big ones before we close. Meta. Most recent flows still quite bullish for Meta here. I think we already saw Meta's drop off on their last earnings due to the big tax bill that they had that cut into earnings quite significantly. Company's still doing fairly well. 20 mil in calls with about 27, almost $30 million of puts sold off. I'm gonna share this with my channel real quick while you guys wait. But Meta looking like it wants to break back into that. I think it wants to break back into the gap it had. All right, let's look over at the chart real quick. Right. Meta had this huge sell-off last earnings. Like I said, they had a huge tax bill that cut into their revenue and their earnings, and that really put it down. You know, quite a significant drop from there. Continued to go further down. Found some support. Bounced twice now at that point, and now we are right back at this gap. It has filled a little bit, about halfway last time. So, you know, with what WaveX has to say, this is a very good possibility for us to start getting back into this gap. You could argue here, though, with the last part of the gap filled, now we're headed, you know, possibly back up to 690, then probably right above 700 would be my targets for that. You want a good, let's see what we see on STAX. I think Meta could be a solid play here. Okay, what we're looking here are what's the most urgent positions. This one's kind of pricey, but this one's saying 670, so it's in the money by Friday. So this is expecting a solid move here. In the money ultimately means that, you know, there's a little bit less of the time decay, and you know, in terms of it, where we could very likely in this situation the break even point would be right at about 694 is what they're saying. 694. So if it heads up towards 700, which is I think a solid possibility, see a lot of strikes for 700 here today, that one should do just fine. 700 right here. These are pretty pricey. So I mean, if you want to take that gamble with this earnings, we've got 670, 700, 650. These are, you know, somewhat in the money, but there is a pretty decent expectation to see Meta go to the upside on this earnings. I think we saw the big drop last earnings, and I think expectations are not necessarily much lower, but at least a little bit lower after that. And I think there's a higher probability to back to the upside now. All right. Another big one, Tesla. I know you guys all want to see this. Tesla looking more bearish than bullish, at least with what, you know, all these puts being taken out here. Let's see if we can see them in here. Okay, puts for the end of the week, aiming for below 415, 430. The most recent big money ones are all puts. We do have some calls being taken out. 4 mil here. But the urgent ones right now are showing to the downside. And you can see with WaveX today, right before earnings, we definitely do have a pretty big spike with Tesla, you know, puts aiming for the downside. Let's peek over at the chart in a moment. I've had this charter for a little bit. We are really just in this flag pattern. You could argue with me a little bit that if I redrew this maybe toward this, we could see it coming down. Let me see on the bigger picture. In terms of volume, though, a decent volume here. You know, it's kind of it's at a decision-making point. Now, the thing that is a little worrisome about Tesla has more to do with the fact that they missed their production numbers just a bit in the most recent report. You know, are Teslas selling? I don't know. I haven't been to their dealership or seen what's going on with them. I know there's definitely a lot of people that love their cars, but I feel that the market is starting to become a little bit more saturated with other electric vehicles that are fairly competitive. A decision is going to be made with this. Either we break down and we head back down toward about 385 or so, or if they really have some surprising numbers or some surprising new announcements, we definitely could head back up toward 500, but I think that's a little bit more unlikely at this point. Nothing necessarily to say about these the indicators right now. No, it's at a point where this channel, it's got to hold, otherwise it's going to break right down. Volume isn't exactly the most appealing at this point, too. We're seeing volume kind of die off from when we came up to these upper bounds, which definitely shows that buyers and sellers aren't necessarily coming into the market right here, which could show a little bit of exhaustion on the upside here. But again, with what Tesla, let's see, 415 would be the aim, 415 and below. I think that's definitely a possibility. I would be on the bearish side of this trade if I were to get in. Where is it? There we go. I'd probably aim for down toward 400. Or at least that's what STAX in the short term STAX trade says, is, you know, they're only aiming for Friday. So the next 2 days we'll probably see it head down. Alright, we got close in 5 minutes. I'm gonna try to get to the rest of these real quick. LRCX. This one's made a strong run up. It is one of the they're an important part of the AI trade. I forget what exactly it is. They do produce some of the machines necessary for this AI trade, but they've run up like crazy over the last few months. So if you went from what, April, that Liberation Day, till now, up 300%, right? So peek over at STAX. Yeah, that would be more on the bullish side for it. Makes new all-time highs is the expectation here. Nothing crazy in terms of recently, but we got some unusual ones for Friday. 240 Man, these ones already made their money. Up 15% since January 14th. This one's really interesting. So by March, this one's expecting it to head back down below 200. This is down right now, but $40 million is being spent on it from just earlier last week. All right, service now. Premium's fairly low on this one. I'd probably stay away from it. They did just do a stock split. Generally, what I think with stock splits is that it is a kind of a ploy to get retail in it. Okay. So we just saw a stock split. We saw a stock split with Netflix. We saw it with Chipotle. When that does happen, we tend to see price drop just a little bit lower because the public and the people that are getting into it now are just being used as liquidity. We definitely still could see earnings be a beat, but I would definitely, there's not enough data on STAX to say what side to necessarily take. But based off of the stock split, I would be a little bit more bearish than bullish on it. Next we got, I don't think IBM has too much going on the flow. Not too much going on. Premiums, nothing really to go off of. Waste management, same idea probably. Yeah, nothing on the flow. Nothing in terms of our WaveX. OVS, Las Vegas Sands. Some calls sold today. More bearish than bullish, but same idea. Not that much premium to really go off of. Let's go into... Get ready for this close. I'm going to put up 4 charts. We got Microsoft. We got Meta. We got Tesla. Tesla's already starting to move down. And we'll do LRCX. I think my face might be blocking part of this one. All right, let's see how these play out today. LRCX already going up a little bit. Here, I'll take my face off this so you can see it. There we go. Go ahead, comment in the chat what you guys think is about to happen. Are you in any of these positions? We're seeing Microsoft. Ooh, that's a move down. Nothing just yet. Tesla down, like I said here. Microsoft's going down. Meta up. Look at that. Right? I'd said there's a gap up. Very possible that we start filling that. I think we see right above 700. Lam Research had a pop, but it came right back down. We'll see what happens. I don't think either of these have necessarily reported just yet. But Microsoft looks like it's hurting right now. Meta had a nice move up, but it's come right back down. Let's see. They beat earnings. Beat revenue. So double beat for Meta. Tesla is down, like WaveX had predicted. Lam Research slowly going up. Microsoft dropping, man. Lam Research inching higher. Still no news on it yet. Microsoft's down 7%. Meta's down about 4%. Tesla's still about flat for after hours. Lam Research is up just slightly. Starting to pop a little bit. About 1% so far. Give it some time. I'm going to see if I see anything on Twitter. Go ahead in the chat, you guys. Let me know what you guys think. Were you bullish or bearish on any of these names? We do have additional reports coming up this week. We got Apple tomorrow after hours. I'll take a look at that after we kind of see how some of these play out over the next 10-15 minutes. Meta falls after full year capex and expenses guidance exceed expectations. Lam Research going back and forth. Tesla's down. No, Tesla's flat. Microsoft down 7%. Meta down about 1%. Meta's coming back a little bit. The blue line levels that I've got on TradingView are my own support and resistance lines based upon larger time frames of where we see support and resistance. So it's not an indicator or anything. It's something that I put in myself. It's just basic horizontal support and resistance. So where you see multiple candles hit and reject. Tesla starting to head back up. Is there any news? Let's see. AI energy drove growth in offsetting declines in automotive revenue and deliveries. Okay. So AI and energy were the reason why Tesla made their, it balanced out what they were losing in their car revenues. They barely beat their revenue estimates. Yeah, beat it despite weaker vehicle deliveries. Meta starting to make that recovery. It's now positive. Microsoft revenue up 70%, net income up 60%, driven by cloud and AI growth. Yeah, they beat earnings and revenue, but they're down 6%. Tesla now up 3%, almost 4%. Lam Research is flat. Meta's started to recover, up 1.5%. Meta revenue up 24% year over year. Higher expenses this year, but rising operating income. Lam Research, strong quarter. They beat on revenue. Huge gross margin. That's good. But it's just struggling where it's at right now. Tesla slowly making its way up. Meta starting to come back up too. Like we said, Meta I think comes up toward that previous gap that still hasn't filled. What else? Yeah, Microsoft earnings and revenue beat, but stock falls. I mean, de-risking what's about to happen before earnings is never a bad thing. Yeah, sometimes you're gonna miss out on something, but you have no idea. This could have just as easily gone the other way, right? Tesla in this situation, very possibly, realistically, with what was being reported, with them missing and having lower sales, there is a very high chance that they're probably going to fall a bit, right? It was a surprise here that they're able to actually beat because they have better AI and energy. Meta's starting to move a little bit more, up 4, almost 5%, going right towards 700. And yeah, Tesla Wave X was definitely more bearish. Meta we said was more bullish. You can see that. Lam Research had great numbers. I think we'll start to see a bigger move later, or it's very possible that the majority of the run-up has already happened, so it's just going to chop around for now. All right, we'll come back to these in a bit. Let's discuss Apple. And we also got SanDisk just coming up on Thursday after close. I think a lot of what Apple, the question with Apple is that they're behind on the AI race, right? They are adopting Google's Gemini to use and to help them develop their Siri AI, but they've been fairly quiet in that space comparative to the rest of the big names. I don't know. Part of me, it is somewhat due for a bounce, but is it possible we see a little bit lower for Apple? Let's peek over at what STAX has to say. Got Apple. Typing in STAX. All right. Apple, this will very likely still change tomorrow, so keep that in mind. A lot of stuff sold off, but a lot of puts sold off here. Much more than the calls. So at least in that sense, Apple's got a little bit more of a bullish sentiment going into tomorrow. But I think we got to revisit that tomorrow. So if you guys are in the Discord, in STAX, I will do a live stream at the end of the day tomorrow, just so we can peek over at what these have to say. Big money long term, says Apple, possibly headed back down under 240. It's a block trade though, with small bits of volume with high OI. This could be a hedge for where it's at right now. This short term one, 250 strike, 180K. That's expecting it to go up, but volume is fairly slow, small compared to that OI. Here's something we can do. So we can do... just show all the expirations for tomorrow, right? A little bit more bullish than bearish. A lot of in the monies. These are already up a little bit. And then SanDisk. Surprising to see more puts than calls. Maybe this is going to mark part of the top for that memory trade. Because the thing that has happened too is that we saw Seagate pop up, which pulled SanDisk up a little bit. So there's a little bit of an expectation here that maybe already played out, right? SNDK, like, look how high it's going already. This type of trade, if this is where we're starting to see this top, my other fib level shows possibly 550, but that, it's 20 bucks away from that. There's definitely a risk to the downside. I still think they beat earnings, but how much of this is priced in right now? Because since their last earnings, this is up 150%. So there's definitely a bit more risk to the downside when it comes down to this name for SanDisk. All right, let's look at Microsoft. Microsoft now down about 4.5%. It's starting to come back a little bit. Tesla now up about 3% overall. Meta is up 3%. Lam Research is up about 2%. ServiceNow down 3.5%. Had a nice pop and came right back down. IBM, ooh, up strong, 7%. This is a big winner for 8% now. IBM. Waste management. Not much has happened with it. Las Vegas Sands down. I mean, I know I've heard a lot about how Vegas is struggling. High prices and lower foot traffic. Misses. Yep. I didn't do this one. Lending Club. Down 10%. Oof. So it looks like the big winner is actually IBM. Up almost 10% now. Headed back toward all-time highs. Just sitting in this channel. We'll see how it reacts with the top of that channel. Tesla up 3%. Yeah, bounced off of the lower end of this channel here. All right, Meta now. How did I not? What was? Is that right? What's going on with this here? Why is that? Interesting wick on that. But if I go to all hours, that wick's not there. So we could say that this is the gap. We're back in the gap. All right. Let's end off with this SPY. But like I said, I think SPY goes back up toward 700. I mean, SPY itself isn't, you know, it's the ETF versus SPX. SPX is the S&P 500. S&P 500 did hit 7,000. SPY hasn't quite hit 700 just yet. There was overnight one day where it did tip on it. No, not yet. So, yeah, I think we see SPY headed towards 700 very, very soon. It's because there's SPX, there's SPY, and then there's the S&P mini futures. And while they move very similarly, right, yeah, mini futures did go up above. SPX went up above, right above 7,000. But SPY is just a little bit below it right now. What just happened? There you go. Yeah, we're right below 700, but I do believe we're headed up toward it very, very soon. One of the hard parts about these earnings situations is you can't close your position if you're in options. You can't close it till tomorrow anyway. But, you know, looking like Microsoft is down, but not as much as it was initially. Down about 4% now. Meta now up 4%. IBM is up 8, almost 9%. Tesla is up 2.5, almost 3%. Lam Research basically stayed flat. ServiceNow down 3%. And then that LVS, Las Vegas Sands, is down 7%. Fairly significant support down over here. Thought it could very possibly bounce at though. All right. A reminder for you guys, if you're not already in STAX, there is a link in the description box below. You can use the code ERULOVESTAX, get 20% off STAX membership. It's an awesome little platform that allows you to get insight into what's about to happen with a lot of these stocks, what the big money institutions are doing, how they're positioning themselves, real-time information that helps you make great decisions when it comes down to your trades. You know, without this type of tool, you're basically flying blind. You're basically, you know, and if you're just following FinTwit and Reddit and things like that, it's very easy to be misled in those situations. So that's where the tool such as STAX comes in handy. And another thing I do want to point out too, we are in the process of developing and in our beta testing of our STAX tracker. I'll give this to you guys. You know, for this week, we saw not only a bunch of gold flow and silver, so there's the expectation that they're going higher. We already saw gold go higher today. But the big ones here, Google is expected to go higher, and same with CoreWeave. They are purchasing this for much later in the year. So we've got down till September and also for June for CoreWeave at least. So, you know, a lot of times what we see in STAX AI is correlated with upcoming news and upcoming earnings for these companies. You know, there's always somebody that knows something behind the scenes, behind closed doors. You know, these are the trades that help us sniff out what's about to come. Our STAX tracker is in development, but you can see 94% win rate across the current 161 active prints. STX going higher now at a 3,300% return. So that $1.3 million that they spent back in July last year is now looking at $44 million in return. Okay. And yeah, I mean, dude, this very possibly should be a little bit higher even. They took a $700 and $740 entry and turned it into 25K here. Okay. That's just nuts to think about. Their current OI, it looks like they're still possibly in this, which is nuts to think about. That they took that and they increased their 33x. All right, this is now, I do believe this is now the biggest winner we've ever had in STAX AI. This tool will be available to you guys very, very soon. Just be patient with us. We are in the process of fine-tuning some last details in it, and it should be available to all STAX users very, very soon. If you have any suggestions or anything that you would like to see, we're always open ears to you guys. You can go ahead and email us at help@investorcentralclub.com if you have any sort of suggestions or things you'd like to see. If you're not currently a STAX member and you'd like to be, there is the link down below, investorcentralclub.com/memberships. You can go ahead and sign up for our STAX program, STAX software. It does also give you access to select channels within our Discord. So when you do sign up, you can always let me know. I can add you in there. Currently, it's still a manual process to give you that native STAX access to our Discord. But again, a lot of very popular, very great tools. Everything in here, we like to be as transparent as possible. That's why we do these live streams. We have daily live streams with multiple of our analysts. Max does it right in the morning on his Twitch channel. I do a closing bell while we have Barack who does one later in the evening. So, a lot of access to us for our members. There's analysis all day, every day. Yeah, currently at 97% on the STAX GLD call. Again, there's some people that just follow STAX blindly, STAX AI blindly, set where they want their profits to be taken. And we've got quite a few people that are doing very, very well with it. We developed this tool to help the retail trader find out what's going on behind the scenes. And we've got insider trading happening with our politicians, Nancy Pelosi. We've got senators that are getting in and out of certain trades because they're about to make policies that affect them. You can say it's unfair, but tools like STAX help us get in on those trades. And as you can see, it's not just the 10% return that you see for SPY throughout the year. We are seeing multiple X returns when it comes down to these positions that we have. STAX has been around for about 2.5 years now in terms of our back testing. Over 500 prints. We're still working on getting some of the expired ones uploaded into this, so you have and are able to view everything that's happened with STAX since I believe like October of 2023 is when we first started doing all of this. I used to do all of these back testings manually. Now that we have such a great tool in STAX Tracker, we're very excited to be able to share this with you guys. Just be patient with us. We've got a last final tweaks to make before it's going to be public for all of our users. But you can see there's SLV, Google, even Oracle, and some of these trades that have definitely been some big returns for you guys. Over 500 prints on average, 300% return. I think that number is starting to tick up a little bit with some of these most recent wins too. So a great tool for you guys to check out and for you guys to use. If you have any questions, make sure you can always email us. If you are in STAX or in the Discord ready, don't hesitate to send us a DM if you'd like. We can always help you guys out from there. All right. That's all I got for you guys here today. I'll hang on for a few more minutes. If any of you guys have anything to say in the chat, go ahead and let me know. As always, hit that like button for me. It definitely helps us out in terms of the YouTube algorithm. Just letting them know that you guys are enjoying it and that it should be pushed out to some more viewers, especially during times of I know at one point during the NVIDIA earnings, one of these previous ones, we had about 50 to 100 viewers. And so help me out there. Hit that like button. Participate in the chat when you can. We will be back in here on Wednesday for our YouTube live. If you are a part of our STAX platform, we have daily live streams for you guys, so you can always catch us in there. And another thing, these live streams are they're up on YouTube, so you can always go back and check in. If you weren't able to catch this right as we went live, you can always go back in on there and rewatch things. You can put it on 2x speed if you'd like, All right, if there's no other questions, no other tickers you guys want me to go through, I will see you guys in the next one. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday, great rest of the week, and I'll see you guys in the next one.